At the risk of sounding like a Thanos, I like balance. I think balance in this world is a good thing. For too long now, America has had too much power, has been dictating too much, controlling too much, interfering, pushing people around. And I think it's a good thing if there's checks and balances against America. You know, everyone talks about checks and balances as far as the American government and Constitution, but what about international checks and balances? If you have a country who is supposed to be the sole superpower, what are the checks and balances to that? That's like having one branch of government that is super over all of the rest instead of being co-equal according to how this American Republican system is supposed to work. What would that mean for your republic? What would it mean for the rest of the world? So checks and balances are good. I like balance. I like checks and balances. Now when you look at, technology and militarily, if you make an honest assessment, right now you have to say that in kind of like this space race 2.0, that Russia once again is beating the United States in this space race. And unlike the last time, I don't know if America's ever really going to be able to catch up or even tie with what Russia is doing right now. We'll see. I mean, who knows when a lot of this information is going to be secret and classified, but who knows? When you look at missiles, rockets, intercontinental ballistics, Russia is beating the United States at that, and has been for some time. Russia is claiming that they have a missile that can travel at hypersonic speed that would be undetectable and basically almost incapable of shooting it down. And if they could ever arm, or if they have the capability to arm this missile with a nuclear warhead, that it would be an unstoppable weapon. So if these claims are true, and if, as Putin has been saying, if Russia does have this capability, I mean, what is the United States going to be able to do to stop it, or anyone else in the world, if they don't have that same type of propulsion system, if they don't have the same type of ballistic ordnance? Not only just that, just in general rocket and missile systems, like the Buk rocket and missile system and others. Russia probably has some of the best rocket and missile systems, even without going into upper atmosphere in the world right now, as far as the military. When you look, ever since the failed shuttle program, the United States, for the most part, has not been able to send manned missions to the space station. They've been having to hitch a ride with the Russians. Right here, this image you see on the screen, there's a lot of people who were even speculating that Russia's shuttle program that they had for a brief period of time was actually maybe even, if not equal, better to the shuttle program of the United States, and that if the shuttle program would have lasted longer with Russia, and if the two countries would have been able to come together and combine resources and technology, kind of like, International Space Station, then possibly it would have led to either a better shuttle program for the world and even future endeavors. But America can't even get up to that station. They have to pay for a ride with the Russians. So when you look at all of these negotiations that are taking place, I mean, you really wonder how much leverage does the United States really have? Because if the Russians really wanted to, they could say, okay, well, If you don't do what we want you to do, we're not going to give you a ride to the space station. We'll give other people rides, but we're not going to let you get a ride. You know, that would be huge leverage right there. You look at the situation even with the private sector, because a lot of the biggest, you know, space success of the United States have been the private sector, not quite so much NASA. So SpaceX had a failed human module situation recently where the thing basically blew up. Now Russia's module, there was a situation where there was a problem with the decoupling sequence to separate the module from the rocket on its way to the space station, and a signal of this error was sent to the docking mechanisms at the space station, and then it relayed it back to the vehicle, and I believe it basically caused the vehicle to avert that course, and so it could jettison the module later on and change its course, and that the astronauts on board were therefore safe because it was able to take a corrective measure. Now, if it would have been, say like a SpaceX situation at the time, maybe they wouldn't have had that system in place, and all of those individuals in that pod would have been killed. So all these countries across the world, especially the ones that try to fight for world dominance, you know, they have power. You know, China has, or they have problems. China has problems. Russia has problems. America has problems. You know, but I think it's a very bad thing for the world for America to be in a position to be considered the lone superpower and to sit on top and try to rule over everyone else, and there to be no leverage, no checks and balances. I think it's good that China can rival America. I think it's good for Russia to be able to rival America, and that there will have to be some kind of a balance of power. And if certain individuals aren't careful, it could even end up being more than simply just a balance. It could be a superiority. So let's see how America responds and how it moves forward, even in more than just what will be considered as space. And to really take a lot of the spookery out of this, when they say space from an international scientific standpoint, what they consider space is called the Kármán line, which is 100 kilometers. You know, that's the number where they said where conventional aviation would no longer work, and you would need some other type of propulsion system to be able to travel. That's it. 100 kilometers is about 62 miles up. So in the grand scheme of things, 62 miles above the Earth is not that big of a deal. So when you're saying space, I mean, I know some people can take this a bit further as far as the scope and the mindset, but 62 miles plus is not that big of a deal. Okay, it's really not. But when you look at the Russians, when you look at the stealth fighter bomber that they have, okay, that could really compete with the U.S. When you look at this new submarine even that Russia is working on, as well as they have drone miniature submarines that are armed with nuclear warheads that can either strike land targets, maybe be detonated above a nation to cause an EMP attack, and even to strategically be basically torpedoed underwater that could cause, a massive shockwave that would result in a tsunami. So Russia's military and technological capability is very capable, and militarily, I would say China right now is probably right up there with the United States, maybe even has passed it to some extent. So we see these temper tantrums that America has been kicking and screaming lately. But Russia's definitely here to stay, and China's definitely here to stay. And while all these nations, as I said earlier, have their own issues, I think it's just best if no one is really going to have any true dominance or sole superpower status, and that we're going to get some checks and balances, especially when it comes to intervention that could take place in the world.